booths out at the tent. I just wanted to make sure you heard that that was booths and not booths. just so we're clear on that. Now, this is an exciting opportunity. I think it's historic. I think this certainly has a tremendous opportunity to build with great momentum in the future. And I have some stellar guests here as part of our panel today. The topic is celebrating our hunting heritage, perspectives on ethics, fair chase, and what hunting means to Wyoming. And you don't have to look far outside of the Cowboy State to see some of the assaults that are on our hunting heritage. And I found this clip to be quite profound that was recently published in a Colorado newspaper. And it says, "We are fundamentally part of our natural world. Death is part of life, and whether we choose to bear witness, we are part of that cycle. Our industrial food chain forces huge distances between a person at the point of consumption on one end and a life ending in death on the other. Hunters, farmers, foragers, gardeners, and others live close to the point of death, but we share equally in its necessity. As our society continues to grow, it is imperative that we consider the benefits of hunting and the importance of science-based wildlife management in policy-making decisions. Our wild things and wild places depend upon it." And I thought that was exceptionally well written. I think the statement speaks for itself, and I think our panelists here today are going to elaborate on how that perspective ties directly to the Cowboy State. Joining me here this morning is Christina Peterson, Alex Livingston, and Charlie Booher. Christine has covered wildlife, the environment, and outdoor recreation in Wyoming and across the West for more than a decade. First at the Casper Star-Tribune as a freelance journalist. She has since written about grizzly bears, wolves, elk, and insects for National Geographic, water law and persistence hunting for Outdoor Life, and chronic wasting disease, mule deer migration, and landlocked public land for High Country News. Her byline also has appeared in The Guardian, Outside, The New York Times, and The Atlantic. She writes regularly for Wildfile, is a contributing writer for Outdoor Life, and former president of the Outdoor Writers Association of America. When she's not reporting or writing from her home in Laramie, she can be found wandering the West with her husband, young daughter, and 2 Labradors. Alex Livingston is a 4th-generation resident of Cody, Wyoming. Growing up, she spent as much time as she could going to the mountains, riding horses, and hunting. Alex graduated from Cody High School in 2018 and promptly enrolled in the Northwest College in Powell, where she pursued a degree in conservation law enforcement. Alex graduated with honors and was Student of the Year. She has followed her father, Lee Livingston, to the mountains ever since she can remember and started working for him full-time in 2020. In 2021, Alex got her professional guide's license and was on track to reaching her goal of becoming an outfitter. She is currently managing the Livingston Outfitting Wilderness Hunting Camp located on the South Fork of the Shoshone River. And just last month, Alex applied and received her Wyoming Outfitter's license. At age of 24, Alex is the 3rd youngest person to receive a license from the Wyoming Board of Outfitters, and she is now preparing herself to be the next generation of Livingston Outfitting. Charlie Booher is a professional member of the Boone and Crockett Club and a consultant at Watershed Results, who specializes in natural resource conflict resolution. Charlie is dedicated to building a better world for people and for wildlife through coalition building and strategic advocacy at all levels of government. Charlie previously served in government relations and communication roles for the Wildlife Society, the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, and Michigan United Conservation Clubs. He worked in the executive office of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department on translating research findings into better governance, and a Boone and Crockett Club Wildlife Conservation Fellow at the University of Montana. Charlie holds undergraduate degrees in fisheries and wildlife conservation and public policy from Michigan State University, and a graduate degree in wildlife biology, public administration, and natural resource conflict resolution from the University of Montana. Please welcome our panelists today. And we will start with Christine.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Joshua, for such a great introduction. I'm excited to be here today and to sit with these really amazing folks and listen to all the rest of the talks today. I am going to chat a little bit about ethics. It's always an exciting one to dive into with a room full of hunters. But so the last handful of years, I've been applying for late season cow elk tags around Laramie, where I moved back to a handful of years ago. Partly as an insurance policy for my family. My husband generally gets an elk in the fall, and it's in the freezer before winter, and everything's fine, and we can turn to birds. But also because who doesn't want an opportunity to hunt a cow elk in January in Laramie? I mean, I know I did. And this year, Josh, my husband, did not get an elk, so I got that coveted opportunity. And there I was, in January, some Saturday, in the just wide open BLM section, looking at a group of cow elk, 50, 60 head elk, probably about 800 yards away. Just a gentle 45-mile-an-hour wind kissing my cheeks. And I'm crawling, and I think, got my rifle over my shoulder. If I crawl at these elk, who clearly have seen me for a long ways, for, 700 yards, maybe they won't think I'm a threat. Maybe I just look weird and small and awkward and not stealthy at all, and it'll be fine, and I'll get close enough to shoot one. And so that's what I do. So I crawl 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards. I stop periodically to pull cactus spines out of my hands. I look at the poop I'm crawling through, and I keep crawling, and I get 400 yards away, then I get 300 yards away, and then my rangefinder works, and that's exciting. Then I get about 250 yards away, and then 230 yards, and they're getting a little nervous now. And I think, okay, should I shoot? Should I shoot at 230 yards? I'm guessing most people here are probably really good at 230 yards. I'm guessing Alex is good at 230 yards. I am not, I don't think. I've sighted in at 200, I have a tight grouping at 200. I told myself, don't shoot farther than 200, Christine. So I think I'm just gonna go a little bit farther. So I crawl a little bit more, and then they do what cow elk do, and they throw their heads up, and they saunter. They don't saunter far, maybe 400, 500 yards. I think, okay, we gotta take two. So I crawl some more, another 100 yards, another 200 yards, more cactus, more poop. And I get about 250 yards, and then off they go again. I'm like, okay, it's fine. We do this another couple times before they finally decide whatever this crawling thing is, we don't like it anymore, we don't want to play its game anymore, and they take off and they're gone. And so I stand up and I brush myself off and I turn back for the long walk to the truck, and I'm partly berating myself because 230 yards, come on, you could have done it could have been fine. You don't have an elk in the freezer, you don't have a lot more days before this season ends. Also, this isn't fun, this is cold. This is really, really cold. But also I'm proud of myself because I said don't shoot over 200 yards, and I didn't. And the thing is, I didn't grow up hunting. I grew up really uncomfortable with hunting in Casper. I had a neighbor that lived across the street, he hunted. And one of my earliest memories is looking at a dead buck in his backyard as maggots crawled out of its eyeballs. And I tell you what, my brother and his kids and I did not eat the deer tacos we were served for dinner that night. We threw them over the fence. But then I got to college and I met a hunter, and I ignored that he was a hunter, and he ignored that I ignored that he was a hunter, and we were fine. And probably a year or two later, we weren't living in the same place, and we were chatting over MSN Instant Messenger, like you did 20 years ago, and he types, "I killed a deer today." And I stopped and I looked at the computer, and I banged out, "Bambi killer," and I slammed my computer, and I didn't talk to him for 2 days. Like, to be clear, I was not a vegetarian. I just had all this discomfort with hunting. And I thought, well, he's bloodthirsty, and he's a trophy hunter, and he's all these negative things that people who don't hunt think about hunting. And so we stayed together, and I became the outdoor reporter for the Star Tribune, and I started writing about hunting a lot, and I went hunting a lot, and I packed animals out, and I butchered animals in the garage, and I asked a lot of you a lot of questions about hunting and your experiences and why you pulled the trigger and why you didn't pull the trigger. And I thought more about it. And somewhere along the way, I ran into this quote by Aldo Leopold. And it says, "A peculiar virtue in wildlife ethics is that the hunter ordinarily has no gallery to applaud or disapprove of his conduct. Whatever his acts, they are dictated by his own conscience rather than by a mob of onlookers." And that felt really true to me. And it really encompassed what I was hearing from other hunters. That there were times that they didn't take the shot and they had their own personal reasons for doing that. And that it also resulted in a lot of unfilled hunting licenses. I thought when I was doing this that I would collect all of my unfilled licenses. I would bring them as like a show and tell. And then I decided that was too embarrassing even for me to do publicly. But I mean, everybody's got, I assume everybody has an unfilled tag out here somewhere. And so then I got some stories, and there was the biologist who had a once-in-a-lifetime bighorn sheep tag. And he had a shot at a ram, and he knew it was probably going to be his only shot at a ram. But the place that sheep was just dicey enough that he thought maybe it could work. I could shoot, it could walk the right direction, it could die in a decent place, I could get it out. Chances are a lot higher that I can't, and that it's not going to die in a good place, and that I'm not going to be able to get the sheep out. Do I take that risk? And he decided, no, I don't take that risk. And so he left, and he had an unfilled bighorn sheep tag, which is a tough thing to sit with. And there's another guy that had a 6x6 elk bugling at 60 yards. He was pulled back, and he thought, is it really 60 yards, or is it maybe 45 yards? I can't get my rangefinder out right now. Maybe I'm close enough. Maybe it'll be okay. Maybe I'll make it. And he ultimately decided, no, it's not. I don't feel good about it. I'm not going to do it. And as I was getting ready for this, talked to someone who's hunted for 40 years. And he had one of these lessons that he learned the hard way. His dad had taught him that he could shoot at running animals. His dad had remarkable success getting down, successfully killing animals that were running. And so he thought one day, I can do it. And he shot at a pronghorn, and it did not go well. And instead of going home and thinking, well, what could I have done differently? I could aim a little farther out. I could have tried it different like this. He said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. This, I can't. I'm not going to shoot at an animal that runs. And that became part of his core ethics. And I think that as we talk about regulations, which do give us some hard lines, right? They tell us some calibers, they tell us species, they tell us area, and that's important. And those regulations need to evolve, and they need to change. And I think we all are taking a little hard look at things after the guy ran a wolf over with a snowmobile and paraded it around a bar in Daniel. And we've got a committee now that's looking at those and seeing what could change or what should change or what needs to change. And as technology evolves, just because we've got a rifle that can shoot at 1,000 yards, do we shoot across a canyon at an elk 600 yards away? Do we have a bow that says it's good to 100 yards? Do we take that 100-yard shot? Maybe some people can. I sure couldn't. But those are conversations that we need to have with ourselves, even if we've hunted 30 years or 40 years or 2 years. They're decisions that we need to sit with and we need to talk to each other about. If we're hunters or if we're not hunters, we need to say, hey, what are you good to and why? What helped you make that decision for yourself? When do you decide that an animal can be retrieved or can't be retrieved? Where do you operate in that gray area? And I think that's the best way for us to respect the wildlife that clearly we all care so much about, which is why we're all sitting in this room. And it's also the best way for us to train that next generation. I've got a 7-year-old daughter who comes with me on most of my hunts. She was in the truck with her dad on my crawl through the tundra in January, but she's been with me when I've shot and when I haven't shot. And she's whispered, Mom, shoot. I've said, no, it's too far. And we've had to have those conversations with each other. And I don't know if she'll grow up to hunt or not, but I want that to be in her mind so that she can make those decisions for herself from a place of a deep ethical decision. And so that I'm really excited to hear what Alex and Charlie have to say about their backgrounds And I would just say, as we move forward, talk to each other, talk to me, tell me your stories or story ideas. I'd love to hear them. And before we go out this fall, check in with yourself and think about what you feel like you can and can't do. Thanks. You're up.
I guess so. Well, I guess I'm a little different than Christine, since she started off later on in life. I grew up in this world. As I was introduced, I am Lee Livingston's kid. But I wanted to start off with this own personal story of mine of how my passion started. It was Halloween. I was in my little Belle princess dress, and I was tired of trick-or-treating. I must have been throwing a fit, and my mom's like, come get your daughter, because I don't want her. And so my dad came and picked me up, and he took me to the lodge, and we walk inside, and there's all these mule deer hanging up. And you're 3 years old, you're curious, you want to know what's going on. And I'm like, Dad, what happened to these deer? And he's like, well, we hunted them. We guided them, we guided our hunters, and we got these deer. And I was like, cool. And I was like, do I get a hunt? And he said, yes. And I was like, awesome. I was like, do I get a gun? Yes. Then I was like, well, do I get bullets? He's like, yes. Getting annoyed with the repetitive questions from his child. And I was like, I'm in. And so that's where just the start of it, just the tip of the iceberg. And as I began to grow, I wanted to be involved in my dad's outfitting world, my own hunting world for a long time. And whenever he could or whenever I could, I would be up in hunting camp. There's been times where I would skip school on the weekends, skip a Friday, go in on the weekends and help set up hunting camp, help set up cots, tables, whatever little kid could do. Get your free work somewhere, Dad. Am I right? And so I just, wherever I could be involved. I remember another time, he picked me up from the bus stop. Next day was picture day, and he's just like, do you want to go to picture day or do you want to go to hunting camp? Hunting camp. That is the correct answer always. And so I'm fortunate to grow up with this. I was fortunate to grow up to be sitting downstairs in my dad's barn watching his guides cape out these deer, and so they become these trophies for these guys that are about to be taking them home and everything. It's great. And so that's what I got to sit down there and I got to watch that. And later on, to teenage years, I think I shot my first antelope at 13. And so I got to start really figuring out what hunting meant. I got to go out with my dad as much as I could. I was the type of girl where I came home with a lot of empty tags, because it was whenever my dad could take me out. And I mean, hunting in the wilderness can be hard, it can be tough, and man, when Lee Livingston is your dad, there's times where it shows. It can be tough getting up into those hills, and you got to do what you got to do to just be one with that animal, And it made me realize that hunting isn't about the kill. Hunting is about the stalk. It is about the chase. It is about watching these beautiful elk on the side of a mountain and coming off of it and seeing, man, do I take the shot? Do I get a shot? I mean, you're lucky if you get a shot. You should be considered lucky if you get a shot. And so that's what I started to really base my ethics and my ideas on hunting is just being out there and being with the animals, seeing what you can do, getting to see these animals migrate and everything. And so around that same time, you're a teenager, you're figuring out what you want to do with your life. And I kept looking to my dad and I was like, well, you get to do this, you get to be one with these animals, you get to chase hard, you get to have fun, you get to experience all these different types of things, all these different types of people. I want to do what you do. And so I did. He was stubborn. He told me I had to go off to college, and I went to college and I went for conservation law enforcement, which very happy to have that underneath my belt. Very happy to have that underneath my belt because it does teach you more into the ethics of the world and how people really think and what people come out here and that kind of stuff. And so I went out there, I got that degree, and I came back and I was serious and I was like, I want to be an outfitter. And so the journey started, and I worked my butt off and I got that license. And so now I'm starting to figure out what my job is as an outfitter, we're sharing this with the world. We're sharing hunting with the entire world. We're sharing that ethics, we're sharing that respect, we're sharing every nitty-gritty detail sometimes about it. And that is good. That is good. People need to see what we do. So there's definitely been times where ethics are questioned, especially as a guide. You get out there. I remember this one time I had a dad up on the mountain with his son. We were cow hunting. He had a great shot. And he was telling his son to shoot, and I was behind him. And so I didn't have the best call, but the dad kept saying, you need to shoot. You need to shoot. You need to shoot. Why aren't you shooting? And then finally the shot went off and it cleared up. He's like, I didn't have a view of that cow. I'm not going to just shoot off when there's other things running around. I can't do that. And that was good. You don't take shots like that. If you're uncomfortable, don't take it. And he waited until he was comfortable, until he had a shot, and he took it. Another thing I ask my hunters when we go out guiding is I always ask them, what are you comfortable shooting at? He's like, well, going back with Christine saying they have these long range things. Well, my scope goes out to 1,000 yards. I'm like, that's cool that your scope goes out to 1,000 yards, but can you shoot 1,000 yards? Well, no. I was like, okay, what have you shot your rifle at? What yardage are you comfortable with? Because I am not going to risk you saying I can shoot 1,000 yards or risk an animal's life for it to just run off and go suffer somewhere. That's not right. I need to know. I need you to be comfortable with your shot. I just need to know this so when we go out there. And they'll tell me, well, I'm comfortable with 300. Great, 300, that is like the farthest I'm going to let you shoot then. That is the farthest. And I'm typically going to try to get you guys closer because you need to experience the intimacy of being up there and hunting. And sometimes I get questioned. I mean, I am a girl in this male-dominated world, like this dominated hunting industry, and so I get questioned sometimes, and you can't do anything about it. If there's any ladies in the room wondering or thinking about how to make a difference, it's going to be hard to make a difference. It's going to be hard to make a difference, but just do what you can do. I mean, if you know your stuff, you know it. Don't let men or people make you falter from that, because that's all you can do is prove exactly what you can do. And that is how I was raised to do so.
Alex, I got. Alex, oh, there we go. I do have a question. I have a question for all of the panelists, but specific to you in just what you have shared here with the attendees. You have mighty footsteps to follow. You have a mountain of a man that has established this business with an incredible reputation. But how do you, as Alex Livingston, blaze your own trail for Livingston Outfitters and establish yourself, not associated as much with Lee, but as Alex?
I mean, I can't lie. I mean, there's definitely been times where I have to follow my dad around like a little puppy dog because I don't know anybody, and I'm like, introduce me to that person. And so, well, I'm young. I have quite a while to make my name and everything, but as of right now, I just want to get out there. I want to be another voice for this industry. I mean, I'm sitting up here today, and it was a challenge for me to come sit up here in front of you all today. But I just want to be involved, and I'm not going to make goals. I'm not going to make plans. I just want to be involved and help where I can, and that is just for right now what I want to do. So I just want to be a voice. I want to be another voice. I want to be another advocate.
and Charlie Booher.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for those excellent stories and sharing your personal experiences. You know, every interaction that we have as individual hunters, be it a conversation with your kiddo about why you can't shoot too far, or a conversation with a guided hunter about why they shouldn't take this shot or shouldn't take that one, it is part of a broader contract that we as hunters have with society. And that's really what I want to come and talk to you here today about, is that contract with society. Hunters in the past committed themselves to restoring wildlife populations that had been destroyed and conserving land that was at risk of nearly unlimited exploitation. Now, having recovered most game species and making good progress in restoring others, our task is turned to ensuring that those species are not unduly impacted by vehicles, by fences, by invasive species, or by the seemingly endless stream of condos and subdivisions that seem to be popping up. We as hunters have to continue to lead. The heritage of the Boone and Crockett Club, in particular, is one of leadership. It's also a voice for all wildlife, not just when we're hunting or on those species that we like to pursue. Our historical success is rooted in our position in society, a position that I'd argue is at risk in a lot of places. Take today's event, for example. We're very thankful to Governor Gordon for bringing us all here together to celebrate our heritage, plan for the future. It's a testament to the state of Wyoming's leadership in this world of conservation. But do you think the same event would be happening in Oregon, or in Washington, or God forbid in California? Not sure that it would be. It's clear that in much of the country, though thankfully not here in Wyoming, that hunters no longer own the concept of conservation. The meaning of the word has been blurred, and the part that remains our own is struggling to grow and maintain its renown. One way that we can maintain that position is by continuing to advance our own ethical commitments in the ways that we hunt. In general terms, people don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. And it's our job to show the rest of the world just how much we care. The challenge of conservation today is the purpose of the Boone and Crockett Club, the shared responsibility of our closest partners and of all conservationists. There's always a way forward if we read the landscape and maneuver accordingly. For better or for worse, we've been here before. While we shouldn't be restrained by that history or force ourselves to run the same plays over and over again, we can at least learn a few things from those who came here before us. At a time when wildlife and wild places were abundant, it mattered far less how we hunted. There was little need or room for an ethical approach to hunting. And when wildlife was plentiful, hunting was not for sport, but for survival and for profit. By the late 1800s, unregulated sport and commercial hunting had taken its toll. Wildlife was no longer abundant or even present in all but the furthest reaches of the remaining wilderness. And sports people already knew what was happening, but the broader public was just beginning to take notice of the extinction of some species and the very near extinction of others. The logical solution was preservation, protection, which may have included an end to hunting. Those closest to the situation had a very different idea. Influential sportsmen who valued the game that they sought and the spirit of the chase stepped forward. Most notably in this world was Theodore Roosevelt. He formed his group of friends into the Boone and Crockett Club in 1887 to address the rapid decline of big game populations on a national scale. Their solution at that time was to promote a new system of natural resource use that was rooted in conservation, and they promoted regulated hunting as the foundation for this new system. The mission of that Boone and Crockett Club is the same as it is today, to promote the conservation and management of wildlife, especially of big game and its habitat, to preserve and encourage hunting, and to maintain the highest ethical standards of fair chase and sportsmanship in North America. Conservation was based on the fact that people need and will use natural resources, including wildlife. But this use would now have to be regulated and guided by scientific inquiry. For society to accept this new idea over complete protection, Roosevelt and the club began to promote another new concept, one called fair chase. At that time, members of the Boone and Crockett Club began to distinguish hunters from other sports people. Take, for example, these first lines from the first issue of the magazine Forest and Stream. penned by editor Charles Halleck, who preceded George Booher Grinnell at the helm of that magazine. He explained that the mere act of hunting or fishing did not qualify a person as a true sportsman, saying it's not sufficient that a man should be able to knock over his birds dexterously right and left or cast an inimitable fly. To be a true sportsman, according to Halleck, required a familiarity with the living intelligences that people the woods and the foundations. He went on to write that a practical knowledge of natural history is of necessity underlying all attainments which combine to make a thorough sportsman. If hunting was going to be allowed to continue at that time, how it was to be conducted and the character of the hunters now mattered. Fair chase became a matter of pride and status. It separated those who hunted for personal reasons from those who hunted for profit, like the commercial market hunters who lacked a similar code of honor. Fair chase became a part of an overall conservation ethic, and it defined a true sports person as one who could kill game, yet use self-restraint and stand guard to ensure that wildlife populations would never be threatened again. Fair chase defined the rules of engagement that elevated sports people to being highly respected members of the community, both for their skills in the field, but also for their long-term commitment to something greater than themselves. We practice fair chase by holding ourselves to a higher standard than the law requires of us. It's rooted in virtue, in duty, and in honor. Continuing to practice fair chase ethics secures hunting by affirming that respect for the law and honor. Honor itself appears in several tenets of fair chase. If you go on the Boone and Crockett website, you can read all of them for yourself. There's honor in respecting local customs, in behavior that reflects favorably on all of us as hunters, on wildlife, and on the environment. Honor is not required by law, but is necessary for building credibility. We can't meet the challenges that we are facing today on our history alone. We need new methods, respect for new views and cultures, and trust in many new partners. And that means that our purposes are bigger than just fair chase. The ethics needed to support professional management of all wildlife include, but are not limited to, three basic forms. Basic ethics, in how we talk, how we get along with other people, and how proper government operates. The land ethic is in how people get along with nature, and our own fair chase ethic, which is how people pursue game wildlife. Fair chase is what separates hunting from simply killing or shooting. It demands restraint and self-reliance, aligns with North American wildlife laws, and is in service to conservation. Fair chase allows for lasting memories that hunters can be proud of, provides young hunters with a proper path in hunting and in life more broadly, and meets the expectations of our modern society, the expectations that the rest of the world has for us as people who pursue wildlife. The Boone and Crockett Club believes that ethical choices in hunting are more important today than at any other time in our history. Hunters' values, their motivations, and their conduct shape society's opinion of hunting, and our leadership in policy and rules and regulation making on controversial topics that may or may not be directly related to how or when or why we hunt are important. That means leading on eliminating poaching as a harm to wildlife, leading on eliminating toxic chemicals that are affecting wildlife populations. And it means embracing a broader community of wildlife advocates to move our conservation community forward. Today, society's opinion of hunting, for better or for worse, will define our continued ability to hunt in the days, weeks, and generations ahead. And that's really why we're all here today. I look forward to answering your questions, and thank you for having me.
Panelists, I have a few questions. I would like to provide some time for the audience to be able to also engage and participate in the Q&A, but I would like to start with this. And each of you, if you would have a few moments to answer this, you're fine to do that. I'll let you sort out who would like to go first. Hunting is and has historically been an incredibly important piece of our heritage and our culture. For many, hunting provides the means for us to connect with natural and wildlife resources that have supported us and nourished us since the beginning of time. What do you think some of the biggest risks are facing hunting today, both as a way to support our families, but also as a conservation tool?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
Had to wait till it turned green. Well, right now I see one of the biggest things that we're facing is we're facing a lot of diseases. We are facing CWD hitting our deer population pretty bad right now, and it could get even worse if it hits our elk population too. And so with having these diseases and everything, I mean, with a family, let's say we have a family that is strictly hunting just for the meat, that's what they need. And they come up and they kill this deer, and then it turns out it has CWD. Well, then they're out of the tag, and they don't have the meat for their family, and that's something that we face. So.
That's a very good answer. Thank you for that, Alex. Christine or Charlie, anything you'd like to add?
Disease was what came to mind first for me also, and I also think there's the apathy that goes along with diseases, particularly like chronic wasting disease. It's been around for a long time, and we just let be around for a long time. And then I also think at least from the number of publications that I have written for around the country and looked at, is the just hard siloing of hunters and non-hunters. And if it keeps siloing like that, hunting will keep getting chipped away at, because we're a really small part of the population. And so there has to be some more of finding common ground among those that carry around bows and rifles and shotguns and those who don't.
Josh, I really appreciate the question, and many things come to mind when we talk about challenges to hunting. But the first for me is we're in the middle of a process right now among the America's Wildlife Conservation Partners, a group of 56 conservation organizations who work together on federal policy making under the convening of the Boone and Crockett Club to build out our agenda for the next administration. We create this document called Wildlife for the 21st Century every 4 years that includes at least 10 recommendations on how the next administration can work in service to sports people and address the issues that we're facing. And those range from threats to funding for wildlife conservation efforts, be that disease or habitat or recruitment. They range from habitat and range management concerns, mitigating the effects of harmful litigation on habitat management projects on federal land and on private land, in motivating private landowners, compensating private landowners to do the right thing when it comes to wildlife habitat management, and helping them mitigate the costs of wildlife. The issues are nearly endless, but we ought to push each and every lever that we can as a community to address the issues that we're facing as individual hunters, as well as in aggregate.
Thank you for that, Charlie. Mish has made it very clear to me that we have 10 minutes. You may have seen the banner way. 10, that's what that means. She's not saying we are at 10, we have 10 minutes. And I do want to be able to have the opportunity for members of the public to engage with this panel. Are there any questions specific to any of the panelists? I'd be happy to run the mic out directly to you. If anybody had a question specific to anything that you wanted to ask?
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Mike Brennan. I live over in Kovac. This could be for our Boone and Crockett representative or either of the other panelists. Fair chase principles speak specifically to the use of motorized vehicles. We're living in an age where our demographics are changing to the extent that more and more of us are urban. Fewer and fewer of us live in the outdoors or are fortunate enough to do so. And more of us are living virtually. How do you see the consequences of drone use and other methods of projecting human presence into the wilderness without using the sweat ethic? Growing up in Wyoming, I think we're all comfortable with the notion that riding a horse 30 miles is not an unalloyed blessing, and it fits in real well with fair chase principles. But when you have the ability to project surveillance and guide where you're going, that strikes me as a real challenge. And four-wheelers are a benefit for some things. They're also a challenge, I would imagine, if you're working for Game and Fish and trying to accomplish conservation in areas where you just don't expect to see people. And there they are. So I'd appreciate any thoughts or perspectives you guys could offer.
I appreciate the question. Fair chase is, as I mentioned, about honor, but it's also about restraint. It's about holding yourself to a standard that is above what the law requires of us. The Boone and Crockett Club has a statement of fair chase in what's required of hunters who want to enter a trophy into our records program. But more broadly, fair chase is unique to each individual person. And it's an ethic that we all carry into the field. And when we think about restraining ourselves in certain ways, for some people it means that they only hunt with traditional archery equipment. For others it means that they won't ride a horse. And for many of us it means that we will hold ourselves to a standard where we're not using some of these technologies that give us an undue advantage over the game that we're pursuing. And the challenges only increase as many of these companies continue to develop products that make finding wildlife and killing animals easier. But it's up to us as individuals to hold ourselves to a certain standard when we are in the field and to hunt your own fair chase. I'll note that the Boone and Crockett Club is working towards, in the next fiscal year, hosting a summit with many of the companies that are producing these new tools to talk about the implications of fair chase hunting with many of these products on the market. There's no opposition to having these new tools or to be able to shoot further or find game more easily or to create new products that make wildlife research easier. We just want to make sure that these products are being used appropriately when we're in the field and that we're giving wildlife ample chance to escape and that the chase is fair each and every time.
Any other questions for the panel? I think we have about 5 minutes.
Thank you for the great panel discussion. So this question goes to, it may be not just fair chase, but it's also understanding population dynamics and what the sort of ethical posture a hunter needs to have to understand how many males to cull versus how many females and how to really get an appreciation of the population.
Was that how an individual hunter determines how they're...
I guess what I'm saying, should a hunter be aware of population dynamics if they're going in the field? And is it just appropriate to hunt the biggest head every single time, or should there be some consideration about what population dynamics are?
Absolutely. Hunting is a pursuit of many of us personally, but it's also a tool that wildlife managers use to manage populations. Not only manage the number of, let's say, elk on the landscape, but also where they live and where they're causing impacts. And it's often a very appropriate management tool to deploy, especially as we find ourselves consistently having the problem of too many elk in the wrong place or not enough elk in the right place. And so that certainly folds into a fair chase hunting ethic. That said, wildlife management is different than hunting, and there's a different standard for folks who are conducting management actions versus pursuing a fair chase hunt. Thank you, Governor Gordon.
Josh? I also will just add real quick that from lots of conversations with hunters, I think there can often be, people have these notions that they grow with, like shooting, we don't want to shoot cows, or we don't want to certainly don't want to shoot does because they're the reproducing members of the population, and so we don't want to shoot those. And then when there's proposals to hunt the females, there's some apprehension to that, or we want buck ratios to be 40 to 100 or something to keep these buck ratios high, so we have a lot of males. And I think that it's worth sitting down with game and fish biologists and really digging into why there are regulations being proposed the way they are. I think there tends to sometimes be a knee-jerk reaction to things, and that if we maybe sat down and said, well, where are these numbers coming from, and how are you coming up with it, and why, that might help us as the hunting public better understand where regulations are coming from and allow us to use our voices more effectively if we still are just don't agree with it. But I think it's worth sitting down first and trying to understand why herds are managed the way that they are, so that we can better help shape where they go.
Yeah, I think that you were spot on with that, Christine. I think that's absolutely accurate. And as just a final question, I think you have all recognized that the hunting community, although birds of a feather flock together, we tend to think that everyone within our circle hunts. We know that the demographics of hunters is very small in comparison. And so I ask you, what are you doing to bring a non-hunter to the fold to help grow this army of hunters and sportsmen and sportswomen?
I'll try it. I'll bite. Well, I think, Josh, if I can answer your question a little more broadly, these one-on-one interactions are how we grow the next generation of hunters. And part of the challenges that all recruitment, retention, reactivation programs face, whether they're public or privately funded or what have you, is that there isn't the constant mentorship and assistance of a family member, mom or dad, aunt or uncle, grandma, grandpa. You cannot buy that kind of mentorship for young folks. And so in my personal sphere, I make a commitment to taking a handful of non-hunters hunting for the first time every year, including my wife. And it continues to grow. And some folks decide that that's something that they want to pursue, and others say, yeah, it's not really for me, but I get it now. That's important. I think those individual interactions are the key. And just as we talked about at the beginning, that's how we grow and maintain our social contract with the rest of society. It is showing what our community is all about, telling the rest of the world who we are, and showing people how much we care about what we do.
Food. I mean, I think honestly that's a huge part of being an ambassador, right? Of hunting is just like, come over and I'll serve you something, and they won't be deer tacos that recently had maggots near them. But I mean, that's try this elk steak, try whatever, you serve them. I have a lot of non-hunters in my personal life too, and it was years before my mom would eat any game. She'd come over and say, is this wild? It's like, no, Mom, I bought cow for you tonight. But now she does. Now she'll eat game, and she likes it, and she appreciates it. And I think that that's something that then leads to really easy conversations. Even then, if they're never going to go out in the field with you and become a hunter, it still at least gives them an appreciation and an understanding, and it helps them see how much you value that animal.
I can relate with Christine there. I mean, yeah, food. I've had friends move here from California, and her sister, she was my friend. She wasn't really interested in it, not at all. But she started to grow more and more interested in it, and I started to take her out more and more, and she's grown a big interest into it, and she's brought some of her non-hunter friends towards me and everything, and I've taken them out black bear hunting and just trying to get them involved. You talk about your stories, you share your stories, that kind of thing. I mean, people, especially on social media, people look at that stuff. People that are interested in it are going to Google it, and if it's out there, they're going to see it. And so it's just another way to connect with out there in the world of those who might be interested or aren't interested. So
Yeah, those are all wonderful answers. And full disclosure, I asked that question intentionally, more than anything, to plant a seed within each of us here in the room today, that we recognize the role of stewardship that we have as hunters, the roles of responsibility and what that entails, and that we ask ourselves, each of us, that. I had mentioned earlier to Steve Meadows in the back that this room is full of tremendous intelligence and great minds in this room. We could solve a lot of problems in this room with what's here. First, I guess, Alex, your friend from California, if she would let others know Wyoming is closed from her state, that would probably be well received. But on a serious note, I think that's where I would like to end this, is that we ask each of us ourselves, what are we doing to bring a non-hunter to the fold? That takes an individual effort, that takes an action item of ourselves, and we each know somebody that doesn't hunt, and what can be gained by that experience to be intimately involved with our wildlife and our natural resources in the field. I truly hold on to memories made in the field more than any other memory made with the loved ones that I share, and even those that aren't here. And I think if we set that goal in front of us to bring someone to the fold, to share these experiences, I think it'll grow like wildfire. And this hunting community and heritage that we have requires such a focused effort. So with that, please give the panelists a round of applause for their time.